Now, for more on the ASEAN meetings, I'm joined by Kai Ostwald live from Vancouver. He's assistant professor at the University of British Columbia School of Public Policy and Global Affairs. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, let's start with a breakdown of the concrete agreements that we saw from the meetings. Let's start with the agreement on the Code of Conduct talks with China.
Well, this is an important decision to agree on having negotiations at some point in the future. It is a clear step forward. I think a lot of critical details are missing at this stage, so it's difficult to make an assessment on exactly what it means in concrete terms.
Now, we also saw there was an agreement about migrant workers' rights and also Hong Kong's free trade agreement with ASEAN. Help us understand the significance of those agreements.
They're significant in the sense that they give ASEAN something to show, the leaders of ASEAN something to show about the direction that the group as a whole is moving in. I think, as is often the case with ASEAN summits, much of the significance of the summits happens behind closed doors. It's in the conversations that happen away from the cameras.
Now, these are very diverse economies with different geopolitical and economic issues. But which would you say are the most significant issues that ASEAN is facing?
Well, the ASEAN leaders themselves identified a number that your previous guest also referenced. There are many issues many security issues, non-traditional security issues. I think in some respects, some of the most significant concerns on the minds of leaders in ASEAN are the changing regional dynamics. We have Trump administration in the United States who has taken a very inward-looking stance, despite the fact that he attended, of course, the ASEAN summit. That raises a lot of concerns about the position of the United States in Southeast Asia and raises concerns in the minds of ASEAN's leadership about the region's coherence.
And we've certainly seen a lot of dialogue, and we know that ASEAN has often been described as a talk shop. But how helpful are these when it comes to promoting regional peace and stability?
The ASEAN summit, again, I think the public talks are not hugely significant. They are a demonstration of unity, and it doesn't take a very close look to see that often that unity is fairly hollow in practice. They're significant nonetheless, though, because they provide a venue for leaders of, as you say, very diverse countries with very different political, economic, and social conditions and perspectives to get together and to talk very quietly and often in a bilateral manner about key issues.
Now, obviously, we have these ASEAN +3, ASEAN +1. How useful was it then to have leaders of non-ASEAN nations attending these meetings?
I think it's very useful. It's useful in the sense that it gives ASEAN credibility, right? We have to remember that these 10 countries, as you say, very diverse economies, very different political systems. There isn't much natural coherence to the regional organization as a whole. And so its ability to affect change, its ability to be an effective dialogue partner is conditional on the recognition that it gets from other world leaders. So having somebody like Trump, having the Chinese premier in attendance is critical because it shows that ASEAN as an organization is a member at the table in these broader regional discussions.
And speaking of the broader discussions, we know that ASEAN meetings usually tend to focus on political and military topics. But what sort of impact do you think these meetings have when it comes to regional economic cooperation and development?
Well, they're key in a number of ways. For one, for a lot of ASEAN member countries, security issues are indistinguishable or at least difficult to disaggregate from economic issues. They are one and the same. Many countries in Southeast Asia see continued economic growth as the only real guarantor of stability for themselves domestically and also for the region. So these two are very tied up. And I think as well as we see with the TPP and other regional trade agreements, there is a very clear symbolic security dimension to them as well. So I would hesitate to see these as two very distinct entities.
All right, thank you so much, Kai Ostwald, assistant professor at the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs and the Department of Political Science at the University of British Columbia.